As characters in D&D grow in level, so too do the stakes of the world. This is why level 20 characters don't have to deal with local bandits, and level 1 characters don't have to deal with Tiamat. But there's a lot going on in between levels 1 and 20, which can bring in a lot of confusion to dungeon masters trying to plan their campaigns. What truly constitutes a level 4 quest? How is that going to be different from a level 9 quest? What types of monsters should I or should I not use depending on my player's level? Ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, how do we balance the stakes of our campaign and world with the level our party is at? Hello again, everyone. I'm Bill, admin and instructor on Altroll. Today, I'd like to go through the D&D sourcebooks to try and answer these questions for all of you by examining something called tiers of play. We'll be reviewing what tiers of play are, how they can help game masters manage their adventures, and how we should use them to guide our expectations of gameplay. If this is the first Altroll video you've seen, make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video to hear about how to learn more with D&D. For now though, let's dive into our first major question. What are tiers of play? Tiers of play are explained to us rather early on in both the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, located in Chapter 1 of both books. However, the Dungeon Master's Guide gives us more details on it, so we'll defer to those descriptions to help us figure out what tiers of play actually are. Under the Tiers of Play section of Chapter 1, the DMG states that the tiers of play represent the ideal milestones for introducing new, world-shaking events to the campaign. As the characters resolve one event, a new danger arises, or the prior trouble transforms into a new threat in response to the character's actions. These milestones are broken up into the 4 general tiers, defined by the range of levels contained within that tier. Levels 1 through 4, Local Heroes. Levels 5 through 10, Heroes of the Realm. Levels 11 through 16, Masters of the Realm. And levels 17 through 20, Masters of the World. In the first and lowest tier, the characters are brand new heroes who are still learning their class features and role within a party. They'll have mostly mundane gear, and will find common consumables like potions and scrolls, alongside a few uncommon, permanent magic items. The stakes of this tier are the lowest they can get, but not nothing, with the fate of a local village or community relying on the success of these adventurers. They'll run up against monsters like goblins, kobolds, bandits, and wolves, but anything bigger than a young dragon will more than likely kill them. So the first tier of play is basically the lowest stakes you can get in a D&D adventure. This is where many new players should start out when still learning the game, but even after 2 years, I find myself running the occasional level 3 one-shot more often than not, just because I love it. Something about the players having enough abilities to have multiple choices in how they approach a problem, but not too many choices that they feel overwhelmed, feels like the true way D&D should be played, at least in my opinion. Overall, this tier is a great introduction for new characters starting a larger campaign, but also works in one-shots to help new players learn the ropes. At the second tier, the party will have a grasp on their individual class features and transition towards mastering them as they grow in power. Spellcasters will learn 3rd, 4th, and 5th level spells in this tier, all of which will begin to have a more significant impact on the adventure. The party will begin collecting more uncommon and rare magic items, which they will keep for the rest of their adventures. They will typically know who they are and what they want, and will begin involving themselves in greater issues that plague the region rather than a local village. They'll face tougher monsters like Yuan-Ti, hydras, giants, golems, and even mind flayers, and might even be able to pull off defeating a young dragon if they're lucky. This tier is, by my estimation, where the majority of games take place in D&D. Characters start to get way more powerful thanks to subclass features and ability score increases. They also get to take on more fun and interesting monsters in combat, some of whom start slinging spells back at the party. The stakes get raised, of course, moving from helping a local village with wolves to stopping an orc invasion of a local region, but once the issues in this tier get resolved, I find that it's a great place to begin wrapping up a campaign, letting the characters retire before starting a new story with new characters. In summary, Tier 2 is a good continuation of a campaign that might have started at level 1, but also works as a good stopping point for shorter campaigns that aren't trying to get all the way up to level 20. At the third tier, the party will be famous adventurers that most people within the realm know of and revere. Spellcasters will push past 6th level spells, which will not only be significant in combat, but alter the way the party approaches a situation entirely. The adventurers will begin finding rare and very rare magic items that bestow very powerful abilities onto the wielder. The party will have transitioned from saving a region to saving an entire kingdom or continent at this tier, and will be tasked with defeating terrible monsters like beholders, giant purple worms, and even adult dragons. This tier is also unique in that it is the first tier where the party would reasonably create their own fortresses, guilds, temples, or even martial orders. They'd also need to hire underlings to staff and protect these places, and some adventurers may even take on apprentices or students who wish to learn from them. Tier 3 is where the majority of players tend to drop off, as getting a campaign to last long enough for people to get to this level is difficult for anyone that has to work a job to feed their crippling dice addiction. That being said, the games that do occur in this tier do raise the stakes again, and the party begins to snowball into unstoppable killing machines. Casters get access to spells that can reshape the world and reality itself, marshals get to hit stuff a little bit more, and I find that it gets hard to keep the story stakes and bonds grounded within the world itself. How do I describe this? It's like the Dr. Manhattan syndrome. The player characters begin to get so powerful that they lose grip of their mortality and are more likely to stop caring about the individual people that they're saving. You've been a hero for so long that being this powerful begins to feel mundane, boring even, which is why I think most games tend to stop around levels 11 or 12. Now, this is just how I feel about this tier, and I'm sure there are some games out there that made it to this tier that kept the players interested and kept their story grounded, but to me, this entire tier just feels like a blur that people pass through on their way to max level. It's just more of the same. Speaking of max level, in the final tier of play, the characters are superheroes in their own right. Their adventures are the stuff of legends, told in taverns across the land, and ordinary people hardly believe the things they've actually accomplished. This tier has spellcasters learning 9th level spells, terribly powerful magic that has the ability to undo reality itself. At this tier, they will also find several rare and very rare magic items, and possibly even legendary ones like the Vorpal Sword. The stakes of adventures in this tier can impact the entire mortal plane or even other planes of existence as well, causing the players to have to fight interdimensional horrors such as Balor demons, titans, archdevils, or even the gods themselves. Reaching 20th level is the pinnacle of a character's advancement, and while it doesn't have to be the end of a character's journey in a campaign, many adventurers will begin to achieve their life goals and help others begin their adventuring journey. For the majority of people, I would say this is actually the end of a campaign. Some games might do a fun level 21 shot to let people really flex all the powers their class can earn, but those are few and far between. The 4th tier of play really encapsulates characters at their most powerful, and fully detaches from the material plane to begin fighting gods, traveling to other planes of existence, or starting other adventurers on their path to become heroes themselves. This is also the tier I have the least play experience in though, so take anything that was my opinion with a grain of salt. So that's the 4 tiers of play in D&D from levels 1 through 20. Now, how can we use this newfound wisdom to help us with how we play D&D? Well, first off, they're great at helping game masters segment their adventure prep into manageable, bite-sized chunks. If I wanted to start writing a level 1 to 20 campaign, where my players and I will spend months, if not years, progressing through an adventure with interwoven stories, big bad evil people, character arcs, side quests, and more, I'd have a lot of writing to do. That type of prep could take months of work in of itself, which is all time that could be spent playing D&D and having fun with my friends. So instead of doing that, we can separate our prep into different chunks based on the tiers of play, and only prep enough to get our players through whatever tier they are currently in. For example, my players are starting at level 1. As such, I only need to prepare enough content to get them up to level 5, at which point the second tier of play would start, then I would prep content for that tier. So, right now, all I need to do is prep an introductory quest, add a minor big bad evil guy in, and make sure that they're threatening some local village or community. What I don't need to do is prepare every quest the players are going to face across 20 levels, flesh out NPCs are not even going to meet until level 10, or build out maps for places my party isn't going to visit until they hit level 13. Because I have no idea how the story might change in just the 4 levels they're going to play through in the first tier of play. A player character might unexpectedly die, they might kill my big bad evil guy way before I thought they would, or my players might not even engage with the story premise that I prepared for them and go do something else that was unexpected. If I wait to do all of my prep work for the later levels when we get there, I don't run the risk of having to redo it all later if something else changes. Essentially, you can cross that bridge when you come to it. So by using tiers of play to segment how I prepare my adventures, I can do less work at the start of a campaign, reduce the risk of having to redo my prep based on a changing story, and focus more on actually playing D&D with my friends. So, using tiers of play can make prep easier, but did you know it can also help with getting your game started in the first place? Not every game is going to start at level 1, and starting a one-shot or longer adventure at a higher tier of play impacts the party's starting equipment. In Chapter 1 of the DMG, we're given this table to help determine a party's starting equipment based on what tier of play they're starting in, and whether they're playing in a low magic, standard, or high magic game. The low magic, standard, high difference isn't a hard boundary, but it just helps differentiate how many magic items the party will be finding across the campaign. Regardless, we can see here that if you're going to be starting a game at any tier of play above the first tier, the party is going to have more starting gold and potentially start with some magic items already in their inventory. This is meant to reflect the amount of gold the party would have earned had they played up to that point from level 1. But like anything regarding treasure, how much or little the party starts with is entirely up to the discretion of the game master. That being said, I highly recommend using this table as a guide for your players to start with an adequate amount of resources that adventurers at their level should have. To finish up this video, I want to talk about what tier you should focus on, depending on what type of game you want to run as a game master, or where you are in your experience level. Now, big important note, this is all purely my opinion as a game master of 2+ years, but new game masters may find it helpful to have a general guideline to go off of. Firstly, if you're a brand new game master, I always recommend starting in the first tier of play, specifically at level 1. You're still learning the ropes, and as such, it's going to be a lot easier for you to run the game if your players don't have access to higher level spells or subclass abilities yet. This gives you the opportunity to learn how game mastering works, whether you enjoy it, and establish how you like to run your games without the added stress of complex game mechanics. Now, if you're not a brand new game master, obviously you can run your game at whatever tier you want to. You don't have to listen to me if you know what you're doing. If you want to run a level 20 game, knock yourself out. I don't want to stop you. But, as I said in the tier descriptions, I find that most games tend to get a little repetitive or stale around the third tier of play. So, if you're a game master who started a game at level 1 and is looking for a reasonable endpoint, or if you're just looking for a shorter campaign that isn't going to require a years-long commitment from your players, having games that end around level 10 or so tend to wrap up any story beats in the game and allows your players to wrap up their character's journey and start a new character with a new game to spice things up. Different game masters will have different game preferences though, so it's important to try out games at a variety of levels once you get a little experience and see what's fun for you. So essentially, if you're new to GMing, start at the first tier of play. But once you get some experience under your belt, start experimenting with higher level games to see what you and your players enjoy out of your D&D experience. And that's everything I have for you on tiers of play. They're a fairly straightforward guideline for how a party's level interacts with difficulty, treasure, and the stakes of a campaign itself. And knowing how these tiers are separated can help game masters organize and run their games better. Plus, after last week's long video, I figured I'd keep things short and sweet for us today. Before I go, I actually want to ask all of you, which tier of play do you prefer for your games? As I said before, I love the lower tiers and have started countless campaigns at level 1. But I want to hear from people who play at higher levels what they enjoy about those higher tiers of play. You can let me know your answers in the comments below, or join us over on the Alt-Roll Discord to discuss it with the rest of the community, the link to which is in the description. If you want to support Alt-Roll's efforts to help people learn D&D, liking or commenting helps us reach more people. And if you want to support us financially, you can leave a one-time or recurring donation using our Ko-fi link in the description as well. However, that's everything I had for you today. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate each and every one of you supporting us here, and make sure to have a great rest of your day. I'll see all of you next time.